How did you become spiritual guru? So, woman to watch, Oprah Winfrey, all this stuff. How did this happen to you?
Well, first of all, I would never call myself a guru, and I'll tell you why.
So what's the difference between a guru and a spiritual teacher?
I think that the idea that you are someone's guru has the implication that you're going to save them. And I'm not going to save anybody.
And when does your career as a writer start to develop?
Right away. So I started very quickly giving talks.
When did you start drinking?
In my early 20s, I actually my office was right up the street. I had my own business right out of college. It was called Sparkplug PR.
Nice.
And it spawned out of my college career of promoting parties. So I was promoting nightclubs.
Take one book of yours and remove it from the cosmos. Which one do you remove?
Miracles Now.
Why? All right, this is a very special day. We've been planning this day since the summer. We are joined by New York Times real best-selling author, not fake best-selling author.
Who's a fake best-selling author?
Most of them are fake.
Like they just say best-selling author? They just say it
because they do okay. Thought leader, podcaster, super soulful spiritual lady, Gabby Bernstein. Welcome to the show.
It's just welcome not only to the show, but to our new friendship. How about that?
Welcome to our new friendship and my childhood home.
Yeah. I mean, what's a better place to become friends?
Do you feel like you walk in and you get the picture, basically?
I got the picture. The picture's familiar. The picture's very familiar.
Because you're a New Yorker.
Well, I didn't grow up in New York City. I grew up in Westchester.
Larchmont sort of counts.
So kind of. It's close.
It's Jewish.
Well, it wasn't that Jewish, but I'm Jewish.
And I want to know, I've been reading about you. I read your book. Gabby's book, Self-Help, comes out this week.
Yeah.
And I've never had anyone on the show to time the book launch.
Oh, wow.
So that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, you tried to get me on earlier, and we kept...
I had a lot of plans.
You had lots of plans, but the universe had a better plan than we did.
The universe has its own plan. Gabby wrote me over the summer, and she's like, want to do a show? And I was like, all right, come over now.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I think we're going to do it for December. I was like, why don't we do 3 before that? And then we'll do your book in December. But Self-Help is a very cool book. It's all about internal family systems. When did you get into internal family systems?
Well, I was actually using it with my therapist before I even realized it was what she was doing. So I was doing IFS, internal family systems therapy is also known as IFS. And it's a therapy, it's a really beautiful trauma-based therapy that is extraordinary for addicts as well. Extraordinary for addicts. And I was doing it for about 7 years without realizing that it was the therapy she was using on me. And then I was watching YouTube one afternoon and I started watching this video of this man, Dr. Richard Schwartz, and he's talking about this therapy that he created. And I'm blown away and I'm sitting there and I'm just freaking out because I'm realizing that's the thing I've been doing with my therapist for all these years.
Do you feel bad that she didn't tell you what it was?
I didn't feel bad. I just think that it would have been helpful for me, not everybody, but for me, having more information would have helped, which is why I'm excited that Self-Help is here because it will give people this idea of understanding what this theory is before you go and do the therapy or while you're doing the therapy. And so I didn't know what it was. I then immediately reached out to Dick Schwartz and I was like, come on my podcast. I just started my own podcast. And he was my 3rd interview and we became friends immediately. I was actually just on the phone with him on the street as I was walking over here.
What did he say? He's like, don't worry about Dopey.
I know, yeah, totally. He's like, relax. No, I told him I was on my way to go preach the gospel of IFS. But he's become really one of my dearest friends and a mentor and a brother, really. He's just an incredible human. And when he came on the podcast, I kept saying, oh, this therapy's helped me so much. I really want to share it in my work. And I am not a therapist. I write self-help books and I'm a motivational speaker. And he said, well, I really encourage you to do the training, the practitioner training. And that was a big commitment. It's hundreds of hours and you have to apply. And so I got in and I did level 1, I did level 2. I was one of the last people to be able to do this training that isn't actually a therapist. So this was I was one of the final people in the world that could do this training and get that certification. And so upon doing that, I knew I had to make this work self-help. And it was important to me to be able to democratize his work.
I think it's also interesting because self-help is a genre.
Yeah.
Self-help is a genre. Self-help is a state of mind. And you called the book Self-Help and I was like, what is this going to be? And then as I read it, I realized that it's about really honoring self.
It's about connecting to self, which is your most resourced energy inside. And so in 12-step, we might call that our God, the God within us, or in religious communities, if you call that God or your Buddha nature, or your spiritual connection, your inspiration, your intuition. And in this case, we call it self.
Right. And I think in IFS, it's an interesting kind of concept, and it's a little bit confusing. Like the idea that there's all these parts.
Let me make it not confusing though today. Okay. And what's cool too for your listeners is that when I was writing this book, I was actually a fellow at a recovery center in Connecticut. And
which one?
I was at High Watch.
Okay.
And I was workshopping the material every month. I don't know if it was the best idea, but it worked and it was helpful with people days into recovery. So each month there'd be a new cycle of folks. And so I'd show up and it'd be a brand new room of 100 people. And they were all fresh and either back in or most of them first time in. And I was giving them this concept. So I'm going to do it for you now.
Let's do it.
And share with you what this means and how it particularly relates to those of us who have addictive processes in our life and those of us who find, whether it's identifying as an addict or just the human experience of having habits or beliefs that are holding you back.
Totally.
Because we all have it, just addicts, those of us that have become addicted, just have those habits in more extreme ways.
Right. And compounded. And
compounded.
Like low self-esteem,
all of
trauma.
It's all humans though. So this is what I would do. I'd get into the recovery room. And the first thing I would say is, how many of you experienced some form of adversity as a child that was pretty extreme? Let's call it trauma with a big T, or any form of attachment breach, or just something that was too much for your little brain to handle. Every hand in the room goes up. And then I would say, well, how did that feel? And they'd all say, it was impermissible. It's terror, fear, extreme pain. They couldn't even contemplate it. And then I would say, well, with all that extreme terror and fear, wouldn't it make sense that you would do whatever it took to protect yourself against having those feelings? And most of the people in the room would start shaking their heads like, okay, yeah, I could see that
could be useful.
I could see that I would have been trying to protect myself from those experiences. And then I would say, well, is it possible to consider that all that protecting and all that controlling and managing these experiences could have led you to addiction? Because it's, keep managing with this thing and that doesn't work anymore. And then, okay, I got to put out the fire of those flames of those experiences. And the only thing I can do is pick up. And then I'd see the rest, maybe a little bit, 30% of the room be like, okay, maybe. And what I'd started to help them recognize is that because of these extreme experiences from our childhood that we were unable to process, and we'll call those exiled parts. That's what IFS calls them, the little traumatized children. We didn't have the adult figures to help us process these big emotions. We immediately started to pick up protection mechanisms. And for some of us, it was like control or people pleasing or beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm inadequate. Or we would try to be seen or heard. And we may even try to become addicted to things at a young childhood age, right? Maybe television, numbing out. Or I was at a meeting one time and someone was sharing about how he was so little and his first addiction was orange juice. He would just be in the fridge, just chugging orange juice, right? Sugar, food, whatever we could do to self-soothe because we didn't have the resources to do that. And so what happens when we have these exiled moments, these extreme terrors and fears, the traumas, we say, no, I never want to feel that again. Little children, we build up these protection mechanisms. And for those of us who had very extreme trauma, myself included, most of us who are addicts, what happens is we went to all lengths to protect.
To numb that out. And so the protector parts is what we're working with. And the protector parts are the people pleasing, the codependency, the overeating,
controlling, the overeating, the drinking, the binging, the numbing with the YouTube. But it could be, it could be something that's seemingly well supported
like
in the world.
Work or something.
Work, right. And, we don't necessarily look at workaholism, but that of course, and we could be praised for that, but that of course, again, is a protector. If I'm working, if I'm achieving, I don't have to feel that suffering. And that's the real thing. As long as I'm doing over this thing, I don't have to feel that suffering. All the overing
What do you mean overing?
Drinking over,
right,
eating over,
right.
working over.
And those are the protectors.
Those are the protectors
that are formed. And the protectors kind of do harm to us by trying to protect us.
Yes. And let's see it through the lens of compassion, right? The protectors can become very extreme as a result of trying to protect us.
Right. Well, I mean, what I got from the book is like, and I get from recovery is like, everybody says addiction is a symptom of other problems. You know, the using is a symptom of another problem. So it's like with this, the protector is a symptom of the other problem. And the book teaches us to be compassionate for ourselves.
Yes. So imagine a world where instead of judging yourself and blaming yourself and forcing yourself to stay clean and being, being mad at yourself all the time or saying, I'm an addict, I'm such a piece of shit, which is what so many of us have said. Imagine if we could look at the addict parts of ourselves through the lens of compassion and curiosity and connection and confidence.
The C words.
The C qualities, which
calmness.
is calmness. And those are the self qualities. Self is the energy. So that's the good news here. The good news is that no matter how far down the road of these protection mechanisms we have gone, in the case of addicts, we've gone far. No matter how far down that road we've gone, we always have self inside. And self is the undamaged, resourced, calm, compassionate, curious, courageous, connected, confident part of who we are. Clear.
Great C words.
These C words, and this is the C words.
People always say
itself.
Don't say the C word, but there's so many
this
good
is a good C word.
Good C words.
And if you think about it, in 12-step program or something, if you enter the community and the fellowship is self before you access your own, right?
Explain that.
So when you enter the rooms and you have a sponsor, and let's say that sponsor has a lot of time under their belt and they sit with you and they're compassionate, right? That's like a great sponsor's got compassion. And a great sponsor's curious, asking questions.
Right. They're perfect. The C words are perfect for sponsorship, you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Or you enter the rooms and you feel connected to the group. That's self-energy.
Or parenting. C words are really good for parenting.
100%, because these self qualities are like an internal parent.
So why are they called self qualities?
So Dick Schwartz, when he realized this process, he was a family therapist and he was doing family therapy with people. And there was a period in time when he was actually working with women who were binging. So he started this with addicts, and they were self-harm and binging. And in session, they would say, well, a part of me wants to cut myself, and a part of me wants to binge, and a part of me wants to do this. And so they're speaking for all these parts of themselves. And then they'd say, but sometimes I feel calm. And sometimes I feel like when I'm with you in the session, I feel some more clarity. And he'd say, well, what's that part? And they would just say, well, that's just myself. That's just myself. It's our natural state. It's our natural, unburdened, childlike, pure, perfect state. The state that we were born into. The state that is the truth of who we are. We just one day at a time been building up these protection mechanisms to protect against the impermissible traumas of the world. And so when we start to unburden those traumas and those protection mechanisms, what's left? The little innocent child, the one that wants to play, the one that wants to have fun, the one that wants to be connected and clear and confident and courageous and creative.
Explain to me how we get the different parts, like the different parts within self, like the exile, like who's the exile?
The exile is a traumatized part.
Right. So, and we bring them back with compassion.
So these are the 4 steps. So the 4 steps I'm going to teach you are.
And we have to do the Gabby's check-in first.
That's what we're going to do.
Good.
So the 4-step check-in.
See, I did my homework here.
I know.
You feel good about that.
Well, this is like my dream conversation. And I really find it actually easier to talk about this when I'm talking about it as it relates to addicts. 1, because I know the listener is going to be very receptive. And 2, because I know that, I don't know, there's something about the awareness of your parts when you have gone so far.
And you're an addict.
Correct. I'm 19 years sober. Exactly.
That's a big piece of it. We speak a language.
We speak the same language.
Exactly.
You can speak for these parts. So, okay, here we are. So there's 4 steps in my check-in. This is a self-help practice that is based on the principles of IFS. But this is not IFS therapy. If you sit down in an IFS therapy session, you'll get a much longer version of what I'm going to teach you. This is a truncated version of the principles of IFS. Okay, so that's why it's called self-help. But it's self inside helping these parts of you.
I'm with you.
Great.
It's like a shortcut.
It's a shortcut. It's a simplified version. It's a way for me to demystify this message.
Good. Okay. Demystify us.
Demystify. Here we go. So the first step is to know or have awareness that you have parts of you that are activated. So maybe as the addict, you're like, oh, I know I've got an addict part of me that can get activated. Or maybe you even don't go straight to the addict part, but you're like, whenever my husband does this, I get super triggered and then I rage. Or whenever I feel out of control, I try to micromanage everything. I'm speaking for all my parts right now.
That's fine.
Or
it's better to speak for your parts.
Oh yeah, speaking for them, exactly. So let's say you have awareness, like, or I'm a people pleaser. Or when I don't feel seen, I hide. Or you know those.
Or what happened at the Mexican consulate?
Exactly. I was at the Mexican consulate today and all of my paperwork wasn't done and my agents had sent only half of it and the 10 a.m. time slot wasn't set up and I'm texting my assistant and my husband and my agents and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Who's saying what the fuck is going on here? A very young part of me.
That's not in control. Like what is happening?
That feels completely out of control, that had parents that were not taking care of her, that had experienced very impermissible trauma, that was living in a world that was completely out of control. And her whole story was, if I don't do it, nobody else will. What the fuck is going on here? And here she was again today, 45 years old, in the Mexican consulate screaming, what the fuck is going on here?
Like, I should be working here. I know what you guys aren't doing because it's so scary to not be able to.
Or why is no one taking care of me? That's how far. Instead of being like, oh, okay, I guess I just didn't get the paperwork right. That's annoying.
It's like me at Stop and Shop.
What happens at Stop and Shop?
Well, they don't take care of me. It's like, why is there no produce? And I freak out. I get very angry.
Freak out and get angry. Yes. Right. So these moments that seem seemingly insignificant are actually really young, impermissible moments that we've been protecting against. So that the part that's like, I'm going to control everything, I have to do everything, for me is a protector. So what did I do in that moment? Okay, so here I am in the Mexican consulate losing my shit. And then they've sent me back to the back of the line because I didn't have all my paperwork. It's been an hour now and I have to come to you and it's a big mess. So I'm sitting there and I'm noticing this part of me that wants to scream, what the fuck is going on here? And so instead of screaming in the Mexican consulate, I check in and I do these 4 steps with that part of me. So the first step is to choose to check inward instead of check out. So what could I have done? I could have checked out, called my husband, called my assistant. Left, flipped out, said, I'm not going to Mexico.
Fuck this.
I was close to that.
I don't believe it. Keep going.
I was close. And so I could have continued on the path of checking out. Instead, I chose to check in. So I focused my attention inward, sitting there. I'm focusing my attention inward and noticing the second step, curiosity. So I start to notice where that feeling is in my body. So where do I feel that? In my jaw. My jaw is clenching. My fingers go like this. I start feeling just like rage in my belly. I start asking some questions to that part of me. Okay, so how old are you? Oh, I'm 6 years old and I'm freaking out. I can even see myself in that moment with my pigtails and screaming, the bumps, like fix the pigtails. What the fuck is going on here, right? And back in that noticing, I get more curious and I start to notice any other thoughts or feelings or sensations that are attached to that part. And as soon as I feel a little bit of connection, I go to the third step. And the third step is compassionate connection. And this is where I ask that part of me, what do you need? And when I asked the part today, what do I need? I heard breath. I need a deep breath. And so I put my hand on my heart and I took a very deep breath. And then the fourth step is to check for self. So you check in again and you're like, do I feel a little bit more calm? Do I feel connected to that part of me? Do I have more clarity? Do I feel a little bit more courage coming forward? Do I feel a little bit more creative? Can I open my mind to creative possibilities? And what I felt in that moment was a little bit more calm and a little bit more clear. And I was able to then text my team without being a complete asshole and say, I need this paperwork. I have 1 hour left before I have to be out of here. I'm now at the back of the line. I need some help. Can you please try to get this done? And so it wasn't that I was miraculous at first. What was the miracle is that I was able to check in instead of check out and tend to that young part of myself with my internal parent, which is self.
I love it. It's a moment to pause and find what's happening and what's reality and not get overly emotional and
exactly
regulate. Now, how did you become this spiritual person? How did you become spiritual guru, soul, woman to watch, Oprah Winfrey, all this stuff? How did this happen to you?
Well, first of all, I would never call myself a guru, and I'll tell you why.
Well, let me call you a guru. It's fun for me.
I'm a teacher, and I think it's super dangerous to be called a guru, right? Because
you have a big following.
Sure.
And you're a spiritualist.
I'm a spiritual teacher, exactly.
So what's the difference between a guru and a spiritual teacher?
I think that the idea that you are someone's guru has the implication that you're going to save them. And I'm not going to save anybody. You're going to save yourself. I'll write the book. You read the book.
Right.
You do the work.
It can fuck you up, right? It can fuck you up to be guru.
I've had many spiritual paths that I followed that were led by male gurus, only to uncover that these men were rapists and murderers and just all the most horrific things you could imagine. I've actually did a podcast called Guru Culture Exposed, pretty much, and it's just a big misstep. I mean, if you're in this space and you're in a thought leader in any way, you better check yourself.
I was about to start calling myself a guru, so I should probably not do that, right?
Don't call yourself a guru.
No, I'm not going to do it. I changed my mind.
No, we got to check ourselves. We got to stay right-sized in this world.
And why did you not decide to become a therapist if you're doing all these trainings?
Oh, I've always known. So at a very young age, when I was 14, I was the president of the regional youth group in my community, Jewish youth group. And I was like leading these weekends of young Jewish folks. And like we'd get together, it was like 300 kids at a temple sleeping over. And I was like leading these weekends. And I was like this 14-year-old leader, spiritual teacher. And I just had this essence, and I was brought up very spiritual. Even though I was Jewish, I was brought up visiting ashrams and named by the gurus and visiting by my mother's guru and sitting at the feet of these teachers and being named by them and meditating at a young age.
Your mom was Buddhist?
My mom followed the Siddha Yoga path, which was the Guru Mai. And she, at a young age, taught me the mantras, and she taught me how to meditate. And all of that was planted in me. And I knew that it was there. And I felt connected. I also felt very psychically connected as a child because I could hear and I could feel spiritual connection.
What is it? How does it manifest?
For me, it manifests as like a tingling sensation, or as a child, what I would feel is almost like when I would meditate, I would feel like a blanket covering me. And there was an attunement to an energy beyond the physical.
What about your dad? What was your dad like?
He was really into Judaism. He was more religious than my mother was. My parents were divorced. They were, God bless them, did the best they could, but they really weren't very attuned to me. And so in my 20s, I kind of turned my back on my spiritual practice and started seeking that self-assurance and self-worth outside of myself.
When did you start drinking?
This is around that time. So in my early 20s, I actually my office was right up the street. I had my own business right out of college. It was called Sparkplug PR.
Nice.
And it spawned out of my college career of promoting parties. So I was promoting nightclubs. And
where'd you go to school?
I went to Syracuse University.
Yeah.
And then when I was here, my parents moved to the city, so I was back here in the summertime. And my cousin would rep a lot of nightclubs, so I was promoting parties. Gabby at the door, 20 years old.
What clubs?
Like back in the day, it would be like CLO, and we had like that mermaid one over here. I forget what it was called. It was like,
I don't know.
It was so, and then Sutra. I mean, there's like all over that, like the old school back in the day, Sweet 16.
Right.
Like
kids shit. Yeah.
Kids shit.
And when you're in Syracuse, from what I understand, from everybody that I've spoken to, my wife included, like Syracuse was this crazy coke hub.
Yeah. But I wasn't doing then. I was kind of casually drinking and smoking weed. Wasn't terrible at the time. Graduate college. But I did have a very addictive relationship issue. I was very codependent. I really could not be alone. I've had this belief that like if I'm single, I will die. That was what it felt like. And so by the time I was in my early 20s, I was trying to prove myself to the world. I had my office right up here on 26th and 7th. And I was running this PR agency, representing nightclubs, just knew that I could sell a nightclub at the time because that's what I was into. I started doing cocaine casually. And then one day I was like, really kind of ashamed of my codependency. And my friend Jonas said something to me. And he said, it's my high school friend. He said, Gabby, you're never alone. Like you can never be single. And I was like, that's so lame. And so that day I put down the boyfriend and I picked up the coke.
Wow.
Like that fast. And I went hard, like super hard and fast. And it was what was a daily addiction became the Sunday nights when no one's in the club, sitting in the back of the club doing coke. Like that's where it took me.
Can you like remember the period where you're giving up spiritual practice, you're kind of becoming a college student, and then the transformation, like what you're just into kind of like guys in college, and were you like partying though? Was there drinking?
Like I said, college was partying and drinking, but not so extreme that it was out of control.
But when you look at yourself as an alcoholic, you look back and you're like, but I was kind of codependent.
The codependency was the first addiction. Love was my first.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, when I tried to put down that relationship, immediately just fell right into the coke.
Because everybody that I talked to about you coming on were so excited, and they said, Gabby never talks about the beginning of her addiction. You have to get some
they've never seen me qualify.
You have to get some good shit out of her. And I said, I don't know. So would you give us a good
let's go there.
Story?
So there's plenty of fucked up stories. So, I was a bungalow girl, so I would just try to get past the velvet ropes. And I had my best friend at the time was the heiress to a rolling paper company. And that was my running buddy, my running buddy. And we went hard. It was the girl who would like snort the coke off the floor. That was where I got to. And the dark side of that, right? You've got random people in your studio apartment doing until 2 a.m. Or not 2 a.m., 5 a.m. And I recall sitting in my studio apartment, and I had these stack of self-help books next to my bed. And I had Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and Deepak, and they're all next to my bed. And journals, because whenever I was coming down, I would just journal feverishly.
You were always writing.
I wasn't really a writer then, though.
I believe that the journaling is writing.
It is writing, yeah. I didn't know what I was writing. I was just trying to calm myself down. And I'd look at those books across the room. And I was in literally the studio apartment was probably the size of this dining room. And I'd be with random strangers, and I'd point to those books across the room, and I'd say something like, I'm going to be a motivational speaker and a self-help book author. Like, while I'm like, hi, right? And they literally look at me and be like, nice fucking try, right? Who are you, girl?
Did you know though?
I knew psychically. I felt that very deeply. And I knew there was more. And I tried to get clean for a while.
When was that thought though? Like I can imagine you high in some room with a stack of books and a stack of journals and talking shit. But when do you think the dream really manifested in you?
The day I got sober.
Really? So so before that, it was just like flashes of who you were going to be.
Well, I was actually right where we are right now in this vicinity of New York City was
Chelsea.
Literally where my life existed. I lived in the West Village, but my office was right over there, and I did lots of live talks at FIT. And so I was giving these talks for free, whereas going into marketing classrooms and just speaking publicly. And I felt so connected to the experience of being a public speaker in whatever form that was. I was just talking to kids in the marketing classrooms. But I was like, oh, this is a thing for me. Like, I need to motivate people. And so at the time I was just able to talk about that, but there was such spiritual faith inside of me. And so by the time it was about maybe a year and a half of really hardcore addiction, I hit bottom fast.
What was that like?
That was just the daily use. That was the, losing friends, losing my brain. Like, I had an intern for a few years and I couldn't remember her name.
Right.
That's where my brain was cooked. And really getting into the yelling at waiter. Like, I'm a really nice person, but I was getting mean. Like yelling at a waiter or yelling at my brother, not remembering where I parked my car. Really dark.
Was it just Coke or Coke and booze?
Well, Coke and booze go together, but the Coke was the bigger issue. And because I wanted to be in control, remember? The controlling part. That's what I manifested in the Coke. And it was just becoming this experience where I started noticing knowing that this was not a good way of living, even though it felt like everybody around me was doing it. And thankfully, by the time I was 25, around October when I was 25, I started to get a sense that I needed some help. And so I called Hazelden I said, hey, is there like an outpatient treatment? Like, that'll be $6,000. I was like, oh, fucking $6,000. And so they said, you know what, you're in luck. One of our top therapists just left and went into his private practice. And the man's name was Dr. Rick Barnett. His office was directly across from mine on 27th and 7th.
Isn't it amazing that here you are today talking about all that?
Yeah. Yeah, here we are. And then his office was right there. And I went into this guy's office, not trying to get sober. I went in there being like, fix me. Like, I don't know what to do. Help me get off. I'm not an alcoholic. And he gave me that book, Living Sober.
Sure.
And I remember going to my mom's house that weekend and like reading it and going through the checklist. It was like, check. I was just looking at it. Fuck, look at me. I'm totally a mess. And I went back to him and I said, okay, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I'm just addicted to cocaine. I just want to stop doing the coke. And finally he said to me, what happens when you do the coke? I said, well, all this craziness happens. And he says, well, what would happen if you just drank? And I said, well, as soon as I drink, I want to do the coke. And he said, well, you have a drinking problem. And it helped me in that moment realize, okay, I have a drinking problem. When I drink, I use cocaine. I have a drinking problem. And so he turned me on to all these young meetings in New York, Soho and Midnight, and even Perry Street, because I lived around the corner. So that became my home group. And I went on October 2nd, 2005, I went out one last night. And that morning I was on my knees in my studio apartment and I was just praying for miracles. And I said, I don't know, God, universe, who's ever out there, I need a miracle. And I heard an inner voice say to me, get clean and you will live a life beyond your wildest dreams.
That's awesome. And you grew up in this kind of spiritual seeking mode where the seeds were all planted. And then you had a nice little existence of no spirituality. Was there any prayer? Was there any spiritual? Were you reading those self-help books when you drank coke?
I was reading those self-help books. I was seeking.
And was it ever weird or uncomfortable to be like, I'm fucking cocaine addict? Like, did that label ever mess with you in your early 20s?
It wasn't something I was able to label until close to the end.
And then?
It was, everybody was doing it, right? So it's like, you can't, and it was funny, like my friends that were trying to tell me to get clean were blowing lines too. You know what I mean? You're just like, fuck you, you're all doing this. So it was hard to to believe somebody or to trust their guidance. But upon getting sober, once I made the commitment and I realized I can't do this alone. I had a friend, and she's still a very dear friend, who I was partying with. She was a friend I partied with hard. And she wanted it also. We both had that mustard seed of hope and desire. And she had a friend that was in the rooms and he told us about a meeting to go to. And together we went to that meeting. We walked in and it was a meeting. It was a big book meeting on Avenue. It was on 2nd Street and Avenue A. And I walked in and I had no idea what these people were talking about because it was a big book meeting. So it wasn't a qualification. But I felt like I was at home. And I cried and cried and cried, and I never left.
Well, all the seeds were planted. Like you were the perfect candidate to go to AA.
I wanted it. Right. I wanted it.
But also you wanted to be in touch with your higher power.
I wanted
You
it.
wanted to do the next right thing. You wanted
I
all
wanted
of these
community.
things.
I wanted like-minded friends. I was already spiritually inclined. Yes, it was really a divine, ripe moment that, there was a moment in my life when I had maybe 6 months before I got sober, I had this psychic reading, and the psychic said to me, you're struggling with addiction. And I remember I was listening to the audio back and it was like, it's not that bad. And she said, well, you have 2 choices in this lifetime. You can go down this road and it can be very destructive for you, or you can get clean and make a major impact on the world. And I remember listening to that cassette tape in my car, just like replay. And I wanted it. I longed for it, but I had to get to enough of a bottom to choose it.
You were also, though, the perfect candidate to be, I mean, it's silly for me to say, like I was the perfect candidate to come up with some heroin podcast because I was a heroin addict who wanted to be a talk show host.
Right.
You were the perfect person to be this spiritual leader, to be this self-help writer, because you had the seeds planted, then you went through something, and then it's kind of like the boom after that. And when does like the real seeking in sobriety start? Immediately?
Right away.
Right.
The first time I said the serenity prayer, I was struck. God was with me the moment I walked in the door. And even though I didn't have my own God concept yet, it wasn't fully in my system. And of course, that's a relationship that you develop and continue to develop. I remember when my sponsor got me on my knees and was like, let's talk to God. And I was like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I remember feeling almost like as a kid, like I felt that energy pass over me. And I was like, I don't know if this is God or energy, or I'm going to call it whatever I call it. But it was there. And it was also, I loved how they would say that God is in the group. Like I was saying before, self energy is in the group. I remember my friend Jeremy, he was about 8 months before me, and my friend Sarah, my friend Carl, and Jacob, and these friends of mine that came in with me, and they're still my friends today. And we were young. We were all like, some of these folks were like in their teens, whereas we were like 19 to 40, right? All these young folks in New York, just like I was rollerblading to meetings, and I would go every day, and I would get dressed up to go to the Friday night meetings. There was cute guys there, and it was I just have such fond memories of that time.
It's perfect, though.
I fell in love with it.
And when does your career as a writer start to develop?
Right away. So I started very quickly giving talks. And I was giving talks at the Gay, Lesbian, Transgender Center and at the Soho House. It was like
perfect.
I was a member of the Soho House, and then I was booking rooms at the Transgender Center. And I would pick up a microphone and tell people to come. And I was like the people on the street, and it was like 50 people, became 100 people, became 300 people. I was just shoving women mainly into these rooms. And I was doing these group coaching workshops in my studio apartment. And those workshops were like 40 people a night. So like 20 people in the first session and 20 people in the second session. It was like I was like had a brothel in my building. There was all these women coming in and out. And I just started very quickly it became a career within about a year. I held on to some of those PR clients while I was doing this. And then I had one client left. And they always say, God will do for you what you can't do for yourself. I had one PR client left. I was holding on to it for dear life because it paid all my bills. And so it allowed me to do all this moonlighting as a speaker and not yet author. And I remember the client called me. I had the best month ever. I got them, my publicist in the room, so I could tell you this. I got them like a TV hit. I got them like this awesome placement, and it was like a New York Post placement. It was like just all this great stuff. And it was my best month yet. And they called me and they said, Gabby, we don't know why, but we think we need to let you go.
Wow.
Look at that language. Let you go. And I at first was like, uh-oh. But then right away I said, the universe is doing for me what I cannot do for myself. And the second that client let me go, my whole career took off.
But it's amazing, though, all of the things that were in place for you to have the kind of impact that you did. You had this knack for PR from the ashram in recovery. It's like it was like the perfect beast.
It really, really has been. And you never want to underestimate where you were and what that journey prior to where you are now has been and why it was that way. I was a self-trained marketer, but
it works for this, though.
It does.
It's cool. It's cool because also you're doing good. You want to affect the world in this like generous, loving way. So why not use this skill to do that?
That's correct. And I always, as I teach people that are authors, or if I teach people that are aspiring thought leaders in whatever form that comes, I always say that it's your responsibility to share your great work with the world. Like your ability to text me and say, come over next week with all that confidence. It's like, that's the thing. We need you to have that thing. We need you to want to be a talk show host because God needs to use you in that way. Right. And so that confidence is your self energy, as we were saying before. And that confidence can be the greatest, and that background also that we have in our own lives, whatever it was that we wanted, when used for good and used in alignment in a calm and connected way, has so much power.
Totally. And I struggle with a lot of the stuff that you teach, like manifesting in general, like the idea of manifesting. Can you break it down? And I want to know, like, when do you start to feel yourself manifesting and the manifestations really starting to come through fruition?
So manifesting is natural. And
hey, I'm a manifester, but I can't say I'm manifesting because then I'll be like, I can't be talking like that. I can't be saying I'm manifesting.
Well,
I need to, though. I think that's the next thing.
That's sort of like a worldly perception, right? So if you look at it like this, we're spiritual beings and we're having a human experience. This is what I believe. Take it or leave it. Everybody can just, say, get over it, Gabby, but whatever.
Listen, go for it.
And I believe that our energy has resonance. And so when we're in a frantic place, what are we creating? More chaos. If we're in a fear-based place, we're creating more fear. If we're stuck in a belief system, we create more of that. When we start to heal those belief systems, and you can use sobriety as a great example. You pull together some time, you do the steps, you get a sponsor, you start to change your beliefs. You start to see some hope. You start to see possibility. You start to crave more of that serenity. And so you start to manifest much more greatness, right? The promises are real. The promises are manifestations of your change.
I remember the first time I was in an AA meeting and I heard the promises. I was like, get the fuck out of here. I was like, can we talk about like regret instead of the promises?
Yeah.
And then as I did it,
the promises become far more real than you could ever imagine.
It's disturbing to me. Being who I am, to have gotten sober where I did, and now actually talk about the promises. Part of me hates myself for it, even though I know it's true. What do you make of that?
So the part of you that hates yourself for it, can we talk to that part with the 4 steps?
This is good. Yeah,
let's do the 4 steps, because you just said exactly what this book is about.
Yes.
A part of me hates myself for it.
Yes.
Okay. So what would you call that part of you? Or,
I would say the cynic.
Okay, you have a cynical part.
Or the realist.
Let's call it the cynic.
Let's call it the cynic. Yes.
Okay, so let's check in with, do you want to choose to check in with the cynic?
Let's check in.
So first, you already did the first step because you just said, let's check in. So choosing to check in is the first step, because it's having the awareness of, oh, there's a part here and I can check out or I can check in, and you made the choice to check in. Great. It's kind of like a prayer, right? I'm going to choose to turn inward.
I'm making this decision.
Yep. Choosing to check in. Second step, let's get curious. So when you go to the cynic, where does that cynic show up in your body physically?
I think like here.
Your solar plexus?
Yes.
Okay. And is there any shape or color? Or
it's like a pit.
A pit in your soul?
It's a deep pit.
A deep pit. Okay. Yes. Okay. Are there any thoughts or feelings attached to it?
Yeah. There's a floating thought that says, this is bullshit.
This is bullshit. Any images or pictures?
Maybe there's a little piece like, you're an idiot if you believe this.
You're an idiot if you believe this. Okay.
To me, not to you.
Yeah, no, I know. Anything else it wants to say about itself?
Don't believe them.
Don't believe them.
Stay strong.
Stay strong.
True. Stay true in your nature.
Stay true in your nature. How long has this part of you been around?
Oh, probably since I was 12.
12. Okay.
I would guess.
Any images of when it began, or?
I think around 12 to 14, like puberty, where I started to feel separated, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be loved. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I developed this, I was such a sweet kid before that. And I developed this weird cynicism. This is bullshit.
Protection mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you connect,
you're doing serious work here, Gabby. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're doing the work. Your self is helping you.
Let's keep going.
So, okay. Anything else that you want to say for this part, or
I think it's scary. Like there's a scary aspect to revealing it, to talking about it, to acknowledge it. And then I still feel that piece of me getting like questioning, why am I doing this in the moment? Yeah.
Okay. Why am I doing this in the moment?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I really do. And is it, how does it feel, that part of you?
I think scared.
Scared. Yeah. You said it. I wanted to hear you say it. Yeah. Can you go to the third step? We can go to the third step now, which is to compassionately connect to that scared part.
So what do you say to the scared part?
What do you need? Ask it what it needs.
What do you need? I think some kind of reassurance.
Reassurance. Okay. Reassurance from who?
I guess from myself.
There you go. Yeah. Can you notice that part? Are you able to notice that part of you inside right now?
Yes.
Yeah. How do you feel towards it?
I feel cautiously loving.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Cautiously loving.
Okay. Okay.
And it's like, it's weird because I've accomplished whatever I've accomplished, and that pit is very, very prominent.
Yeah.
you know, and I need to be more openly loving with that pit.
Okay. No need. Right now you have a little bit of cautious love towards it.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel a little compassion for it?
I do. I'm also a little bit disgusted with it too.
That's two things can be true in this moment. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Then oftentimes we don't like these parts of ourselves, the protectors, we don't like them. But all we're trying to get to is a glimmer of self right now. So the cautious love is beautiful. Do you feel a little bit more connected to it in this moment?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. You have clarity about the part?
Yeah, I think I do.
We're doing the 4th step now, which is check for the C qualities of self. Do you feel a little bit more calm when we talk about it?
Yeah, I do.
You do?
I do feel also a little bit like a cunt in it, though. Does that not count?
A what?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. I kind of heard what you said.
Okay.
And do you have a little curiosity, a little bit more curiosity about it?
I do.
Do you feel like you might commit to this part and say, like, I'll check in with you again? Are you going to open the book with Gabby and do it one more time in the future?
I think this is really nice.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and then I need to say the other C word. And then it also, my cunt word mimics my cynic word.
Of course.
To undo.
Of course, that's a part.
All the other C's.
It's the jokester cynic that's saying, ooh, this is close to home. Don't totally know if I'm safe here. I'm going to make a joke right now. And let's have some compassion for that part if it's possible. I have a lot of compassion for that part. That part's just doing everything it can to maintain and not feel that feeling.
Right.
Yeah. But you did this perfectly.
Good.
Like
this is good.
You felt, because all we're going for is a little glimmer of self, right? All we're going for in these moments is a little bit more clarity, a little bit of calmness, a little bit more connection.
And compassion.
I have cautious love. That's perfection.
And seeing it. Clarity.
Right? These parts are little children. For you, it's a 12-year-old little boy or whoever you could, we don't have to gender it, but like there's just little parts of us and they have the desire to feel seen, soothed, and secure, but they also do not trust anyone.
Right.
Let alone us. So it's there is that cautious.
This is cool. I appreciate
this. How cool is that,
right? Very good. I think this is very good.
How cool is this for addicts, right?
No, I think it's good.
Yeah.
And then how do you teach a cynic to manifest?
Exactly what we just did.
Okay. Now, here's the
thing, Dave. So we manifest what we believe.
Right. So if I believe cynical shit, then you're
going to keep manifesting it, or you're going to block what you really want. Okay.
So the dream is still alive though in there because I've manifested so much stuff.
Yes, you've manifested the things that you believe, but you might be upper limiting yourself. I'm not going to put this on you. I'm just making this as like a general suggestion.
What is that?
Right? Like the cynic could have this story of like it's too good to be true, or when Rich Roll called you and said, "I want you on my podcast," what did the cynic say then?
A lot of stuff.
Lots of stuff, right? And so your self energy, which is your service, right? Your compassion, your connection, the creative energy that's created this incredible podcast has such strength and power. And it's getting Rich Rolls calling you, and you're getting all this beautiful content, and you're doing such great things in the world. And there's so much more that's necessary for you. God needs to use you in much, much more, even more and more and more. And it doesn't mean celebrity or fame, or maybe that is what it will mean, but however God needs to use you. But the cynic is one of those things that would block your manifesting power, because the cynic belief of, oh, this is too good to be true, or who am I to do this, or how dare I?
But the cynic is sometimes good for the show. For the show.
So here's the good news. As Dick Schwartz says, there's no bad parts. So the cynic, we love the cynic. The cynic's funny. The cynic's
smart.
He's like character. He's very smart.
Right.
People resonate with him. He's truth, as long as he's not in an extreme role. So the less and less, the more you help the cynic, more self helps the cynic, the more the cynic can settle, and the more the cynic settles, the more funny he can be,
right.
The more playful he can be.
Less
he can be
fearful.
Like a child again.
Right.
And maybe he's no longer a cynic. He just becomes more of a jokester.
Right.
And he's more of an optimistic jokester.
A dreamer with cynicism.
He's just like a funny guy.
Right.
He's a funny guy.
All right.
He takes on a new role.
Now let me ask you this. You were a horrible cokehead. Now you're a hardcore spiritualist. Were there ever psychedelics?
When it comes to psychedelics, I mean, I think that they're really healing addicts. I think they're really helping people. I think that I would recommend that somebody have at least 5 years of sober recovery before they do it, because I think that it could take you out.
Especially if you were a psychedelic person in your addiction.
It will take you out.
Right.
And to do it not with like some random shaman in LA, but to do it with a therapist or to do it with a trained professional.
Right. And like as the psychedelic revolution kind of rises and this spirituality rises, is there danger? Like, are you worried?
There is some danger in, I think there is danger for addicts in one, doing it too early in your recovery. I think, I mean, look, I don't want to be coming across as judgmental, because someone could be at a treatment center and they offer this and it changes their life. And so I think it's a case by case situation. But I do think that with a lot of people like microdosing and journeying on the weekends, and I know a lot of sober people doing that it starts to become a party and it's no longer a healing experience.
Totally. And it can open the door. Like in both ways. It can open the door in some kind of really...
And I also think it will work. And I think it's really tough. I think that the proof is in the pudding that people have really transformational experiences of unburdening these addictive parts of themselves. And I think but I do recommend to do this with therapeutic guidance and support. And I think we even saw that with Matthew Perry, right? I mean, I don't remember exactly the full story here, but poor guy, he was doing ketamine treatment, which was probably very, very helpful for him. But then it made that part of his brain want more of it.
Well, ketamine treatment scares the shit out of me. And what I also understand about ketamine treatment is like...
Do you think it's different than psychedelics?
I do.
Yeah, why?
Because it's not like an expansive psychedelic. It's like, as far as I know, I'm as much of an expert as I claim to be, like, I think it's dissociative. It's not an expansive. It's like, it calms you down. It doesn't do what like LSD or ayahuasca or ibogaine might do. It does something different. I think it loosens you up.
I think they're all opening up your brain to have an experience of these parts of yourself from your resourced self. So if you're doing it with the right therapeutic guidance, you can have the capacity to almost witness, this is what I'm aware of, you can have the capacity to witness these protection mechanisms or your addict part through that lens of genuine compassion and healing. Right. And that's where the neuroplasticity starts to come in, and you can actually reprocess traumas that otherwise you might not be able to get to in therapy because the protectors are too strong. And so really what it does is it takes down those protectors and allows you to reprocess and gives your brain the capacity to open up to that ability to reprocess that traumatic event with safety. So that's the goal, really. That would be the intention.
Right.
I don't think that people are using it, all people are using it that way.
Well, certainly not. And all of those substances I did in active addiction, and none of them I did with any kind of shaman, expert,
right. Well, they were part of your active addiction. Exactly.
Absolutely. And the Matthew Perry story is obviously very sad. And ketamine is like, it hits hard.
I know it will take people out. It could take you out. Totally. If you don't have real recovery. But I think that if you have some time and you have you're at a treatment center, or you have a therapist that's trained in this, or there are paths where that kind of healing can be very powerful. But I don't know. I think that everybody has to really cautiously make those decisions for their own sobriety.
Totally. How did you get to the Oprah level?
Well, I was in my early 30s, and I had a few books out at that point. And at that time, we didn't have social media really. So we had a little bit of it, but not really, or podcast or anything. So Oprah was the holy grail for getting a book out to the world. And she just started Super Soul Sunday. And I just had a vision of it. I knew that was my dream, And I put it on my vision board that I had at the time, and I would meditate looking at her. And I put a picture of myself on someone else's body.
Was it Oprah's body?
It was Oprah in her body, and then another person being interviewed by Oprah, and I put my face on that body. And so I put that on the board, and I would look at that, like this image of me being interviewed by Oprah, and I'd meditate on it, and I'd hold it. There was like some rumblings of this, and my new book was coming out. And then one afternoon, I was just at my desk, and I had this inner knowing, and I took up a little Post-it, and I wrote, "I'm ready to be on Oprah," and I put it on the paper. And then the next day, I got a phone call from a Chicago area code. And this is when you would still just pick up the phone because it wasn't like being spam bombed by people. So I was like, hello. And they said, hey, this is Cornelia, I'm a producer at Harpo, and we'd like to have you on the Oprah Super Soul Sunday show. And I said, oh yeah, I've been expecting this call.
That's so
and
funny.
So that was a really big turning point for me, because it was just qualifying my work in the world. I was very young, and it was sort of being named like a next generation thought leader. And also to be acknowledged on a spiritual show like that. It's Super Soul is a spiritual show that just really presenting you as a spiritual teacher. And so that was huge for me. And frankly, it was resonant with what I believed at the time. And even now, with this work, I was just talking to Dick Schwartz on my way over here. And I said, my team is talking to Oprah. The book is at Oprah. I'm like, I see you and me, at being on the Super Soul podcast, or I can vision it. I can see it, So I think that and my publicist is in the room, so I'm just planting these seeds as we talk. And even yesterday I was texting with her and I said, I can't wait to go to Montecito. And, those feelings, as long as they're not thirsty, you're not like thirsty behind the feeling. It's not controlling the feeling.
Well, where does one start and the other one end? Like, why is that? How can there be no thirst in wanting it? Isn't there has to be thirst in it?
No, in this moment, for this instance, I don't have any thirst in wanting that, because this isn't always the easiest thing to access, but my faith, I have developed a faith that whatever is of the highest good for all. I really surrender and surrender more. I have daily prayer. I pray all day long.
What is your prayer like?
My prayer is literally help me. My prayers are, I'm controlling this. Help me reorganize this. My prayer is, thank you. I believe in spirit guides and angels and God. I know that I have these entities around me, supporting me, guiding me, and directing me. I believe that spirit works through people. I believe that when we're in alignment with our calm self nature, that we are super attractors, that we are manifestors, that we can take the next right action and show up for life and do our good work and be of service, and that the universe provides for that energy. And I was actually, for the first time in a really long time, up against a thirsty energy just this week.
Tell me about it.
This is crazy. So with regard to like Oprah,
I'm always thirsty, and I'm always trying to do the next right thing, and I'm always trying to align.
So the balance here is like doing the next right thing is what keeps good things coming to you, and the thirsty is like the little thing in the way. And so we'll work with the
So tell me about your thirsty.
So
thing.
it was a little bit like, not so thirsty, but more stressy. But it was like, so at this time of year, I always have this perennial event that I do that is really beautiful. It's called the Manifesting Challenge, and it comes out every January. And this year, at the same time, I was launching this book. So it's like hit with like the two biggest things all at the same time. And I was still working through this part of me that's like trying to trust my team to do their part and, find my way out of things simultaneously. And then to throw more on top of it all, I scheduled my book tour on January 10th in New York, January 14th in LA, January 16th in San Francisco, and then then Boston, Mexico later on. But the early January dates were like really truncated in the front of the year. And so all of a sudden I woke up and I was like, oh my God, I'm not accustomed to this. Usually these events will sell out. It'll be, but it's Christmas, it's the Manifesting Challenge, it's a book, it's too many stories to tell. And so I started noticing myself being like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to, and I started getting nervous and like kind of controlling, and not that something had to be done. I had to step in and say, hey, ads team, run some ads, and email team, send some more emails, and let's call some friends and see if they can support us and get some people there, whatever that was. And I emailed my publicist who's here, and I said, can you put this in some listings? So you have to do the things. But I noticed myself doing it from this place of not thirsty, but fear.
Yeah.
And I was witnessing it. And I was like, girl, you haven't been here in a long time.
Right.
And I checked in with it. And it was right back to that feeling of, if I don't do it, nobody else will.
No, I feel like that all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like that all the time. And the first question that I had when I got sober, because I was not accustomed to talking about God's will. Like, that was not a natural thing for me to talk about. And my will versus God's will, and what I wanted versus what God wanted for me.
Right.
And what my first sponsor said is, he's like, as long as you are in the next right action, as long as you are looking out for somebody else, you are in God's will, regardless of what you want out of it.
That was the message I needed to hear today.
Well, good.
That was my reminder, right? As long as you're in God's will, the next right action will be presented to you.
Yeah, I struggle with greed, like ambition, thirst. Do you know what I mean? Like that pile.
Yeah, that's a part, right? So
it's fear. It's fear that I'm not enough.
That's right. That's right. So I promise you this, if you for 1 minute a day check in with that part, you'll see big change in your life.
And how important is vision boarding?
I don't vision board anymore.
When did you vision board? Were you
when I was younger.
Scrapbooking too?
Yeah. But I mean, if it's fun, if it's joyful for you, manifesting is about joy, right? But the biggest manifesting flex is self-help, the book I'm teaching now. The reason is because you manifest what you believe. And this book helps you on a molecular level heal the core beliefs that block you from your manifesting.
You run a book writing course, an online class.
Yeah.
And
I gave it to you, right?
You gave it to me and I've been taking it. And when I went into it, okay, this is a very important conversation.
I'm totally going to help you get a book deal. We're going to manifest that.
Well,
right
when I went into it, right, I got
to get you an agent. Do you have an agent?
I have an agent.
Okay.
They don't care about me though.
I'll get you another one.
You got to get me an agent who cares about me. So when I went into it, I wanted to write a memoir about Dopey and about Chris dying and recovery and the whole story. And I took I'm in your course. I don't know, third, fourth weekend, whatever, going at my own pace.
The bestseller. Yeah. The bestseller masterclass. Yeah.
Say it again.
It's called the bestseller masterclass.
The bestseller masterclass. Yes. And then as I'm taking it, I'm like, because one of the great tenets you keep talking about in that thing is you can't write every book in one book. Right. And then I get this thought, like, maybe this isn't the book I'm supposed to write. And then I was making fun of you on the phone with my best friend. And I was like, he's like an aspiring novelist. And I was like, do you know Gabby Bernstein? And he's like, no, what does she write? And I was like, oh, she writes self-help and she wrote Super Attractor and she wrote this book. I started listing the titles of your book and then I made a joke and I said, she wrote this book. You're fucking amazing. And then he goes, she didn't write that book. And I said, that's going to be my book. I'm going to write a self-help affirmation book for people who hate self-help affirmation books called You're Fucking Amazing.
A self-help book for people who hate themselves.
Wow.
You're fucking amazing.
You're fucking amazing.
A self-help book for people who hate themselves.
You like it?
I have full body chills. I'm fully channeling that for you.
So do I do that first or I do the memoir first?
You do this first.
Do this first.
Yeah, maybe it is the memoir. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I think that it has a memoir. Okay, I'll just channel it for you. Do you want me to channel it for you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So when I teach this course, I'm always able to download titles for people. Okay. So I can hear spirit. So when I saw little sparks of light over your shoulder earlier, which is like those sparks of light are signs to me that your guides are in the room. And so they want you to write the book. What I'm seeing is the book is a guidebook with story. So it's not a memoir because memoirs are like, people don't love to buy memoirs.
Not
like
anymore.
they don't really sell well.
Okay.
It's not that you can't. I mean, there's beautiful memoirists out in the world, and it's not that won't be a book you'll write, but I think that you're going to have your bite-sized cynicism and snarkiness. It's got to all come through. Okay, let's use that part for good in a fun way. And it's a self-help book for people who hate themselves, period. And it's You're Fucking Amazing. You're fucking amazing. The self-help. This is going to be huge, huge. Can you go write that title down and send it to me, right? Like what it is it's little snippets, right? With like a little affirmation, a little story, right? So like, you tell your story, then you have a little lesson, another little story, then another little lesson, another little story, another little lesson, another little story. And that's the whole book.
How are you recording this? This is going to be very helpful for me. Okay.
He's not recording.
Good. Very good. Very good.
This is your book. So I want you to write that up. I want you to put it into like a paragraph form. It's You're Fucking Amazing, a self-help book for people who hate themselves. Forward by Gabby Bernstein.
Sick.
Done.
Sick.
Done.
Thank you.
And I'm going to send it to, unless you want Rich Roll to write it, which is just as good.
No, I want you to write it.
Okay, we can both write it.
Please. Do you know how hard it is to get Rich Roll to answer my text? Listen, what about angels? How did you come into
back
them?
to your book for one more second.
Please.
Send it to me today in an email. I'm going to forward that whole thing with like a little paragraph.
Tell me again. So write, You're Fucking Amazing, self-help book for people who hate themselves, forward by Gabby Bernstein.
And then just write like one paragraph about what I just said. It's like, it's stories and little mini lessons for helping people find
from a snarky cynic sensibility.
From a snarky cynic sensibility to help you, really heal. It's a self-help book.
Find love.
Teaching your truth, teaching what you know. right?
I love it.
Teaching what you know. And I'll send it to Michelle Martin, who is my old agent, who will go for bat for you.
Why would they go to bat for me, though?
Because that's the person that's going to do it.
All right. Thank you.
She's going to love this.
It's very kind of you.
She's going to love this.
You like it.
I don't like it. I live for it.
All right, good.
I live for it.
Do you get this high for everything, though? Or you get all excited?
I get very excited about this. Do you know what I channel most for people is higher purpose.
Right.
Sometimes that's like the kind of medium that's sitting around being like, your grandmother's here and she wants you to know that you should be drinking more milk. You know, like that's not my thing. My thing is when people are wanting to up level their spiritual purpose. So that's usually career or, life or family or whatever it is. But it's typically like the purpose-driven work in the world. That's what I'm here for.
All right, good.
I'm a juggernaut. And I'm also like, a can opener. It's like, let's crack it open. Let's get to work.
I love it. I'm very excited. I've been thinking about this every day for weeks.
And the other thing is really beautiful because the way that you described how you got to that title is actually how spirit works. In the course I teach you, like just talk about it, right? And when you just talk about what it is that you're writing, the title comes out of your mouth. And the lessons come out of your mouth.
It came out of my mouth in this moment.
That's the core message workshop that's in that. Yeah.
I also invented a cookie in the same way with the same friend.
Okay, cool. What's the cookie?
The Othello cookie. It's a 2-sided black and white cookie. It's black and white in every bite.
Is that at Katz's?
Not yet.
Oh,
it was at Katz's for a few weeks, but nobody wants to touch my cookie.
Why?
Because the labor-intensive nature of having icing on 2 sides, the bakers don't like it.
And then holding it. Maybe it needs like a handle.
I think it needs a hook. I think it needs to dangle and you spray either side. I don't know. There's something that can be done, but it's the same friend. It's a friend who I've been friends with since 8th grade.
Keep talking to him.
Yeah, he's one of my angels. So where do angels come from?
So we all have spirit guides and angels and ancestors and spiritual entities that are supporting us and guiding us and protecting us. And again, this isn't for the person, take it or leave it, God of your own understanding, spirit of your own understanding, take it or leave it. This is what I believe. You can receive signs and messages from these guides. For me, I receive visuals, or like I saw that spark of light above you that tells me that your guides are here. Or my left hand might go numb and I start to channel. Or I talk really fast and ideas come quickly. And these guides and angels are oftentimes come to us as intuition. So it's these moments of sort of sparks of creative ideas or inspired ideas. And when many people might have those moments when they actually got clean, that they felt like almost like an energy moved through them, or they felt like they were being pushed into a room or guided to a meeting. And the synchronicities, those are all the angelic realm.
Awesome. You want to do Gabby's speed round?
Let's go.
I have a friend who's a painter. He loves you. His name is John Bucati.
I love John.
Paints in New Orleans. Okay, the Gabby speed round. You ready? Who's funnier, Deepak or Oprah?
Deepak, I think.
Okay. 333 or 111?
333.
Tapping or breath work?
Oh, good question. Both.
The both answer is always so annoying. Can you manifest with too much trauma?
Of course.
Who is the father? This is a trivia question from John. Who is the father of manifestation?
Wayne Dyer.
No, she says Ralph Waldo Emerson. You think he's wrong?
But he's not wrong about that. But when I think of manifesting, I think of Wayne Dyer was like my teacher and my friend. Yeah.
Yeah, he loves Wayne Dyer. That's how he found you, John. Can you be a self-help junkie?
Yes, absolutely.
Are you one?
Not anymore.
That's my question.
Not anymore. I used to be, but you can be. And it's kind of like spiritual bypassing. But sometimes that's the best we can do, right? It's a protector. Sometimes that's the best we can do.
Why did you name your son Oliver?
I was in a restaurant in Sweden, and there was this lovely waiter who was so sweet and somehow knew a lot about me. It turned out he was a reader of mine.
Nice.
And his name was Oliver. And I said to him, I love that name so much. I'm going to name my son Oliver.
Beautiful. Take one book of yours and remove it from the cosmos. Which one do you remove?
Miracles Now.
Why? It's
a book that I wrote about this yoga that at the time I was very committed to. And it turned out that the head of that yoga lineage was a real, not bad, terrible person. Did terrible things to women and to people. And I want to denounce that book.
All right. So we're denouncing that one.
I'm not going to denounce the book because there's
that's
good
the one
wisdom
you take
in it.
out.
It's what I take out.
All right, that's fine. Besides any of the books that you wrote, and you can't say Course in Miracles, what's the book that had the most impact on you and your shifts?
A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
All right. Shifts, is that a thing? What's the shifts?
Shift in your thinking, shift in your perception.
Nice. Is Wayne Dyer the real deal?
Absolutely.
All right, that's it. Did you have a good time?
I love you.
I love
You're
you
like
too.
my best friend now.
I'm your best friend now?
You might be one of my new favorite people.
Well, please. Let's
we
stay
might be in the
touch.
top 5 of 2024.
Put it here.
Here we go.
There you go. Thank you, Gabby.
Yay!
Right on.
That was awesome.